So what I want to do is I want to take these and I want to look at them one at a time kind of in the forensic arena, right? Now, there's lots of research that happens in forensic psych. You don't necessarily, well, let me back up, right? I just got back from the American Psychology and Law Conference, which was in Philly like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and that's just the national gathering of all the forensic psych people who are doing research, and they share their results. And there's a ton of stuff on judicial decision making, and it's fascinating, right? Like, how do judges make decisions? There's a lot of stuff happening right now in terms of like race. In fact, our journal just came out, or just got delivered to my house yesterday, and they did this really interesting experiment on jury and judicial decision making where they had African American males. One of them was named Jamal, one of them was named James, right? And everything about the case was the same. When they gave the information about the case to potential jurors, like fake jurors who were part of the experiment, Jamal got 409 days longer on his sentence than James did, even though everything else about it was the same. Like, the case vignette was the same, the photo of Jamal and James was the same. It was just like whether you had a stereotypically African American name or not. And Jamal gets 409 more days. So a year after good time, right? So people do a lot of interesting stuff. Judicial decision making also, judges tend to hand out lighter sentences in the morning, and then the penalties for sentencing gets harsher until like noon. And then sentencing, it gets lighter, and then it gets harsher as the day progresses, right? And interesting, but like the simplest explanation is they're hangry, right? Like 9 o'clock, you just had your breakfast, right? You're ready to start your work day, you're paying attention. Come 11:30, right? So I hope nobody has to go for like a felony charge, but if you do, like bring the judge a Snickers if it's after 10 a.m., right? It will make a difference, right? So that's a lot of interesting stuff. Program evaluation is what I'm doing with the police, right? We're instituting like a training program for mental illness and crisis de-escalation, and then we're going to take the next year and look at how many, like the officers we trained and their use of force, right? And just see like if our training program worked. Police practices is kind of goes the line there, but also that goes with the like virtual reality research that I'm doing, right? So if we have everything about the scenario be the same in virtual reality, but we change whether or not the person has mental illness, do the officers behave differently, right? If we change other aggressive behavior, how do the officers act differently? Obviously, there's a lot of research going on with criminal behavior. It's probably not as much as you might think. Most of it's getting done in just a couple schools, but that's obviously something of interest. Jury behavior I already talked about, and then competency is a big issue right now, but I don't want to get into the weeds on that. But there's just a lot of questions in the legal system right now about like whether not only competent to stand trial, but like was this person competent to waive their Miranda rights? Because you read them the Miranda rights and they were like, no, I waived my rights. And then they admitted everything that they did, but they might have an intellectual disability. They may be diagnosed with some severe mental illness that affected their decision-making process. So is that admission good? Like, were they even competent to waive their right? Do they even understand their right? So there's a lot of interesting stuff with that going on right now. Now, the researchers are kind of from everywhere, right? Obviously, there's some of this going on in psychology. Our CRIM program at Mason is really good, well respected in the country. But I will say that, like, and this is just me guessing after talking to everybody, probably half the professors in CRIM are psychologists. They're not clinical psychologists, they're research, but their doctoral degree is in psychology. They just kind of happen to focus on CRIM. Obviously, a lot of the stuff's going on in law schools and, believe it or not, in social work, because they're dealing with a lot of community mental health issues, social justice issues. There's a ton of forensic research going on in social work program, including here at Mason, right? So let me move to treatment.